granted everything I said a few minutes ago about Marx not giving the roadmap for how to govern the post-revolution world, I'm wondering if you, qua Marxist, still have a roadmap for how you would like to see this well, I guess maybe there are 2 points to this. There's really the utopian ideal way that this conflict gets resolved, and then there's the what could actually practically happen.
Now let me try to respond. Marx enjoyed making fun of people who predict the future. Nobody can do that, he said, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. So I'm not. The future will be decided in and by the people of the future. You know, it's not for me to do, and I can't do it anyway. So let me then turn to utopian use. Good, that's the right way. I think that one of the root causes, and here comes the Marxism, one of the root causes of the problems we see in that part of the world is the division of people into a small minority that are employers, that are in the position of owning a business, running a business, expanding a business, sitting on the board of directors of a business. In the United States, depending on how you count, using the census data, that's between 1% and 3% of the population. I'm assuming in Israel, more or less the same. I'm assuming in Palestine, more or less the same. The vast majority, even if it isn't the same, the vast majority of people in all of these societies are not employers. They're employees. Perhaps in Palestine, because of their conditions, and a disproportionate number of those who are employees are also employers in the sense that they're self-employed, that they, whatever way they earn income, they do it on their own, as an individual, this or that. But even with that modification, we've got a class structure in the way Marx understood it. Just a footnote. Marx has a different concept of class than do other people. The concept of class is older than Marx, much older. You can go as far back as ancient Greece, and you will find in Athens and Sparta, in the world of Plato and Socrates, awareness that it's important to understand who has a lot of property, who has no property at all, and who has a little. And those people can be divided, or if you like, classified, using the verb to classify, into the rich, the poor, and the middle. So you don't need Marx to understand the category or the concept of dividing a population according to what they own, how much wealth they accrue as income or hold as wealth. That's one concept of class as property. The rich, the poor, the propertyless. There's a second ancient concept of class. It's not about what you own, it's about the power that you wield. Are you an order giver in the community, or are you an order taker? Or are you somewhere in the middle? You have to take some and you give others. Then you have a class analysis with adjectives like ruling class or ruled class. Marx inherited those categories. He didn't invent them. He doesn't deserve any credit for them. Human beings have used them to understand, to criticize, to transform their societies for thousands of years. But Marx adds another concept, another way to classify people into classes. The class of those who produce wealth, the workers, and the class of those who gather that wealth into their own hands. The appropriators of what the workers produce that they do not themselves consume, or what he called the surplus. Those who appropriate the surplus versus those who produce it. That's a different notion of class. I'm going to use Marxist, and I'm going to say that if you divide the workplace, every workplace, the factory, the office, the store, if you divide it into a small group of people who are the employers versus a large group of people who are the employees, you have made a profound choice from which you are not going to escape by being blandly able to say, I had no idea. I understand that. You may not have been conscious of it, but you did it, and you're doing it now. When Marx makes the quotation with which you began today's conversation, the history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggle. What he meant was, in slavery, it was the master and the slave. In feudalism, it was the lord and the serf. And in capitalism, it's the employer and the employee. And now I'm going to be your Marxist essentialist for a moment. That's the problem. You are dividing people in a profound way at the point where they produce the goods and services without which they could not live. You have organized production around a relationship that is inherently unequal, unjust, and violently explosive. And it sets in motion, that's what Marx wrote about in most of his life, a series of social consequences, which of course will vary from one culture and one history to another, but a series of consequences played out in one country or another that ought to begin to give you the following idea, and this would be my contribution to Israel-Palestine. You want to overcome your horrible history of mutually antagonizing, torturing, threatening, frightening one another? Get rid of that situation. Deal with your societies at the ground where the tension and the conflict begin. Don't organize your societies with a group of people at the top making all the decisions and a mass of people who have to live with them. There's no democracy in the workplace in capitalism. When you cross the threshold into your factory, your office, or your store, you are giving up your democracy. The board of directors in your company where you work, do you vote for them? Never. You don't even know who they are. They make the decision. Will you have the job or not? Will you keep the job or not? Will the job be this way, that way? Will you experience this way? Will you have 42 minutes in the toilet or 12? What? All of that is decided at a level over which you exercise no control. You've accepted that. And if you do it, you are forcing people to learn to live with the opposite of democracy. And if you do that 5 out of 7 days of the week in the office, the factory, or the store where you earn your living, you're not going to suddenly become democratic in your political appetites either. You're going to actually have to become used to the absence of democracy. And the only thing that makes that more bizarre is when countries like Israel and the United States, which are undemocratic in the workplace, refer to themselves as democracies. At that point, You're in Caca land. You're in a land in which the words a la Aldous Huxley have become the opposite of what they were intended to signify or to refer to. So if you want a utopian answer, go to the root of the problem. And one of the reasons I would advocate it is everything else that has been tried hasn't worked. That's a hint that you're not going deep enough. You're not asking the right questions. What Hamas did provoked Israel. What Israel responds provokes the whole Arab world. This is a dead end. And yet the people doing it, having no other where to go, no other idea of what they might do. Suppose you replaced, last point, suppose you replaced the capitalist system of employer-employee. What would you replace it with? The socialist answer has always been a collective, a democratic workplace. One person, one vote. We decide collectively what to produce, how to produce, where to produce, and what to do with the product. Is that possible? Of course it is. In Israel, it takes you back to the kibbutzim. And you rethink, did we make a mistake by burying that experience? Is there a modern version of doing that? Is it being done around the world? The answer, by the way, to all those questions is yes. The tragedy of Israel and Palestine, nobody even asks the question. Nobody uses class analysis to wonder whether the class structures in both of them are hindrances, are problems. What would it mean to go in a different direction? What would it mean to organize production in a different way? What would it even mean just to think about it and to talk about it? Would it be possible in workplaces to make sure that the collective that democratically decides is both Israeli and Arab? Ooh, what an idea. What an idea. Maybe you wouldn't even allow anything else. Maybe you would say there has to be at least one Israeli if it's a group of Palestinians, and there has to be at least one something. Begin to think about the kinds of ground-level changes that might solve the problem. But I have it easy, because any utopian idea I came up with would be better than what we are watching unfold. Mm-hmm. But in the end, let me make it real clear. However horrible this all is for the Palestinians, and I can only imagine, and here I'm using the stories my relatives told me when they were still alive about what they had witnessed in Europe. So it's horrible what's happening in Gaza. But what the Israeli community is laying out for its own future, itself, its children, in the isolation with a declining empire. Wow. That this can be done without a serious national debate about it. Even if you did it, but you had the debate so that people could think about it as it unfolded, you'd be better off. But they're in the worst place. They're taking this bizarre decision with a blank refusal to think about it that is tragic. But if you're going to live through a declining empire, which I can see, I've learned. I spent a lot of my research studying the British Empire. The first book I ever wrote was about the British Empire in Kenya in East Africa. A book published by Yale University Press, and one of the books you go to if you want to understand colonialism in Kenya. By the way, settler colonialism, refugees from Britain who got rid of the African population in the highlands of Kenya to produce high-quality coffee, which is still their export to this day. So, I mean, I understand the pain, the denial that goes with a declining empire. But here I am, an American by the fate of history, and I'm watching it unfold here with the sad realization that Americans are not asking the question, what can we learn from how the British went through this so we make a better thing of it, learn from it? No. And they make the same mistake. The same mistake. The Russians are going to collapse in Ukraine, and the ruble is going to disappear, and Russia is going to get all wrong. And here we are, a year and a half later. Obviously, it's all wrong. No lesson. We're going to do more. We're going to give them more missiles and more F-16s. I know. Blah. Whoa. What happens to people who cannot imagine? We blew it. We didn't get it. Maybe we need to ask some other questions. And since I know these people personally, I ask you and your audience. They know who I am. And I'm not the only one, not by a long shot.